Just a heads up, I started this video as one idea that slowly morphed into something else that I did not realize I was actually super passionate about until I started doing corrections and research about the original topic of this video, which was movie trailers. I found myself typing like an ADHD-fueled college student at 11:45 with a midnight deadline, desperately trying to make things like sound cohesive out of my rambling. So with that being said, I kept the original introduction to this video because it's what led me to the Mario and Luigi of the explanation of this journey. And also, for future reference, I'm not an expert or anything. I'm just a dude who goblin rants on the internet and just wanted to share a cautionary tale with you. Ah, yes, movie trailers. You know the things that play before the movie you paid almost a month's worth of rent to see in a theater, where you're going to awkwardly try to figure out whether you want to go get a refill before the movie starts, use the bathroom, or attempt to rapidly open your snack as quickly as possible without flinging bunch of crunches into the air like a sprinkler who suddenly became self-aware of its maximum spray and velocity and range. Long gone are the days where movie trailers were things that used to play on VHS tapes or DVDs in rage-inducing unskippability,
now available to own on video and DVD.
Before your brain relented and began memorizing them as some form of coping mechanism that you probably now replay in your head at times of high stress or insanity.
We have our heading. Here we go!
Or maybe that's just me. Or, for the more modern social media age sophisticated person, an accidental exposure to a movie's major plot points and spoilers via thumbnails, your most trusted friend, or your own curiosity. Movie trailers are so dubbed because at their original conception, they trailed the movies that were being played in theaters with the intention of garnering excitement, wonder, and curiosity for whatever movie may be coming out. The very first one, debuting in 1913 by Nils Granlund, where he spliced together rehearsal footage of a Broadway play called The Pleasure Seekers. Can only imagine the minds of those witnessing this trailer in 1913. They probably were spinning, having no time to recover from the debut of Ford's moving assembly line, the UPS Postal Service officially delivering parcels, and the Woolworth building towering at a staggering 792 feet in New York. This trailer eventually spawned an industry of advertising for movies and shows that we are all too familiar with today. But I'm not going to be talking about that today. Why? Because I realize that although movie trailers can garner views on multiple platforms and through marketing schemes or gimmicks, I don't feel that people are as drawn to them as they once were. Because you see, in some ways, we were actually obligated to watch movie trailers in order to actually see the movie or show we wanted to see, whether that be through TV or, again, going to the theaters or mind-inducing rage of unskippable DVD.
Now available to own on video and DVD.
I still can't. Why would they do that? I understand why they did. Okay, I'm going off on a tangent. Anyways, but now with that sense of obligation not present outside of feeling nostalgic, I think people seek something else to help form their opinions and desires to watch movies or upcoming shows by way of media content reviewers and parasocial interactions, more specifically, parasocial relationships. According to Wikipedia, parasocial interactions, for those who are unfamiliar with the term, are a parasocial interaction, an exposure that garners interest in a persona, like a social media influencer, celebrity, etc., becomes a parasocial relationship after repeated exposure to the media persona causes the media user to develop illusions of intimacy, friendship, and identification. Positive information learned about the media persona results in increased attraction and the relationship progresses. Parasocial relationships are enhanced due to the trust and self-disclosure provided by the media persona. Which sounds a bit extreme and borderline obsessive. However, it goes on to highlight the meat and potatoes, if you will, of what we're talking about. And if you don't like meat and potatoes, then the coffee or tea and the need of caffeine or whatever business analogy, but whatever this means business analogy you want to use, I don't know. Per continuing Wikipedia, the Mario and Luigi of it is this. Media users are loyal and feel directly connected to the persona, much as they are connected to their close friends, by observing and interpreting their appearance, gestures, voice, conversation, and conduct. Media personas have a significant amount of influence over media users, positive or negative, informing the way that they perceive certain topics or even their purchasing habits. Now, you can make the argument that media reviewers have been around for centuries, or that be overinflated opinions of books, movies, plays, games, music, it doesn't matter. We can inadvertently look to other people to help determine whether something is worth our time or not. But long gone are the days of waiting for reviews to be printed in papers or late-night movie connoisseurs offering their carefully curated opinions. These reviewers, though, were separated from their audience by time and resources, and that's important. because it allowed a sense of disconnection from these strongly opinionated personas and their audience. But now, with the way social media is at our current point in history, time and resources for interacting with these connoisseurs of opinion are almost non-existent. Sure, there's a screen between us, but being able to post your immediate thoughts in response to a creator's opinions and potentially have those thoughts be validated or interacted with is very powerful. Or, at the very least, realizing you have a lot more in common with a popular person, or in this case, a persona, than you realize, which unintentionally forms a one-sided bond or trust, which slowly changes your thoughts or opinions over time. And that segment is what I want to focus on. I'm going to stress this point very deeply to you right now. You are not immune to the influence of random people you don't know personally on the internet, regardless of how strong your personal beliefs or opinions are. Because I thought I was, and I was wrong. You may be inclined to argue with me on that point and be tempted to turn away from this video and turn it off for something else while I continue to yammer on inertly on your screen. You have every right to do so. However, I would ask you to grant me a couple of concessions if that's okay. You may not personally have been affected by these things, and I think that's awesome. Like, I really do. I love that for you. But I am sure you could agree with me, you know someone who has. And on top of that, on some level, you may be confused on how that person suddenly had shifts in their beliefs to something not previously held by them before, making all family gatherings really awkward now. Or you can agree with me that you are at the very least someone who is curious to see the actual appeal of why people watch someone else review media. So, if you're willing to hear me out, I will quickly share my personal experience in this matter because I too thought myself above the influence. And if you stick with me to the end, you will be more aware of a method of how random people on the internet can influence everyday people like us, your friends or family, and I promise you won't regret it. A few years ago, I was under the impression that I was immune to the influence of random people on the internet. More specifically in the realm of movie and TV reviews. So I wanted to try something because I was bored. I wanted to watch a very specific brand of media content reviewing, knowing the tactics commonly used to garner engagement and prove to everyone that they were wrong and I was above the power of social influence. That content I began to slowly consume was so contrary to who I was as a person because honestly, I really just kind of wanted to stack the deck in my favor. This is like definitely not a scientific thing. I skewed the metrics like crazy. That content being cynical, fueled, hyper-conservative, and very critical of media messaging creators. I'm talking about the people who think that DEI is the bane of all existence, that everything that has come out of movies or shows in recent years that isn't hyper-masculine is a part of some conspiracy theory to warp the paradigm of heroics. Creators whose content breaks down the stories to the nitty-gritty details in order to point out how weak the writing is. And more importantly, creators who would be people that I wouldn't share a hot tub even if there was more than 50 feet between us because we're not gay. I inoculated myself with the intellectual knowledge of how social media can affect a person through like the use of comedy, self-depreciating humor, word salads, and overall consistency in consuming media. I also did not stop viewing the normal content creators I had grown to enjoy to ensure a variety in what I was watching. Again, trying to stack the deck in my favor. The one thing I really looked over in all of my preparations was the power of anger. I don't struggle with anger very often, or really at all outside of like extenuating circumstances. So I didn't even consider that would be something I would have to like prepare against because I felt I did a great job managing it overall. And spoiler, that was the Achilles heel of my journey. But more on that later. So, this is what I discovered after about 6 months of consistently watching this brand of content reviewers and having to step away from it. I'm an overconfident idiot, and that it did not matter how socially, ideologically, and demographically I was different to these creators, I still internalized some of these lines of thinking and would make judgments on shows and movies before watching them, no matter how weird the opinions and incorrect the breakdowns of these creators were. I found myself getting upset over things that used to not bother me, harboring some unknown resentment towards new movies being released because they weren't perfect in every way. I saw that I began to recognize female protagonists as all Mary Sues and looked for how men in movies or shows were being demonized, infantilized, or prejudiced against any recasting of a character to someone representative of a different skin color, belief system, or comic accurate representation annoyed me because it had to be for some hidden reason instead of that actor being the actual best person for the role. I recognized that I suddenly was interjecting these ideas verbally into conversations in small ways when people would bring up like the very movies or shows that I had seen these creators review. Keep in mind, some of these movies and shows I did not watch myself, but spoke with authority over them as if I had. All of this in light of watching the normal content creators who did align more with my outlook and beliefs about life and the value of representation and the individuality of people. And just for clarity's sake, I in no way harbored these inclinations prior to my experiment, which is why I walked into it so overconfident that I could not be swayed or moved. And to make this very clear, all of this is incredibly embarrassing and humiliating to admit, but also enlightening in a way that showed me parts of myself that were easily exploitable to cause micro changes in my mindset and identity. Again, I must say that before we go any further, this is all anecdotal, but I still believe it's helpful. So don't like look at me as like some psychological expert on this particular subject or anything like that. I'm just an observer and conveyor of my personal experience. So how did this happen to me, and how could this happen to someone you know? And honestly, the answer is subtly. To illustrate this, I'm going to talk to you about 3 techniques used in selling someone something. I have a good bit of experience in sales, and the combination of these 3 things worked the most consistently. These methods aren't done sequentially, but rather mixed in throughout the conversation. Here's a fun fact. There's a tactic used in selling where if you can start getting people to verbally say yes to you in small, innocuous things, you are more than likely able, over the course of the conversation, to get someone to agree to spending a lot more money than they initially intended to. The point of this is to slowly disarm a person's psychological defenses of immediately saying no to everything you suggest, because some people, well, honestly, I would say a majority of people, will go into a store and say, this is all I need or want and nothing else. Under most circumstances, that's fine. But with people who are so entrenched in that mindset where they don't see that what they would consider is a simple problem or fix is actually more complex, requiring more or different approaches. It is not going to help them resolve the need that they came in for to stay entrenched in that idea. So, in order to get someone to see the complexity needed for their problem, you have to start slowly getting them to say yes to break that mindset in order to see the bigger picture. This is done by asking very simple yes or no questions. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Do you know what brings you in today? And also, you can point out little things you notice about them via context clues. Are you a student, parent, etc.? And so on. The goal isn't to ask yes or no questions about what they're in there for, because that's an easy way to be stonewalled and not given them the best buying experience and the selling experience. But rather, you want to focus on who they are or observable things about them, which is an important distinction, because in the first 2 minutes of a sales interaction, I'm selling this person on me as an individual before I really even talk about the product. Likewise, if you can get someone to relate to you in small things, you build rapport or trust, which makes getting them to agree with you on other things that much easier. The goal here is to build some common ground between the two of you to stand upon. Whether that be with a slightly relatable story of self-depreciating manner, jokes, body language cues like standing next to someone when they're talking to simulate shoulder to shoulder, coming alongside them as if you're in this process as partners, or making certain body movements and watching to see if this person you're talking to begins to mirror those movements as well. When I got to a place where I felt the customer wasn't on the defensive, I would begin to nod my head or alternate between what I would call an asking position and a listening position. When I would talk or ask a question, I would stand straight up, elbows tucked slightly into my sides while making non-exaggerated hand movements, like this. While I was listening, I would assume a position of leaning back on something and arms in front with one hand thoughtfully placed upon my chin. I would alternate these positions until the customer would start to mimic this behavior without knowing it. No one taught me how to do this. I was just naturally doing it and suddenly became self-aware of these subtle notions, which led me to the most important thing to me in any interaction I have with a customer. One of the other things I did as a salesperson was I always told the truth. I was upfront about the good and bad because I understood that trust and rapport was more valuable over time than an immediate dollar sign sale. If someone could trust you and your opinion on things, then they'll keep coming back and eventually stop questioning your recommendations. Trust is foundational for building a relatability which allows you to have less guarded interactions over time. Foreshadowing! And lastly, if you pair those two things with this final, subtle interaction, it becomes a powerful tool for completing a sale or solidifying someone's opinion over time. That last interaction being affirmation. In terms of sales, this works by telling your customer they made a good choice in what they bought from you by summarizing the benefits of what they bought or summarizing the benefits of time spent with you, which helps remedy a tricky thing in sales, especially big ones, called buyer's remorse. You may say things like, "You made a smart choice today," or "This is absolutely the best solution for insert whatever solution they were needing here." Always frame the customer as the one who made the decision independently when consulting all the insight and information you presented to them. In a way, you're complimenting their intelligence and appealing to their ability to make good and rational decisions. While doing this, you may sprinkle in borderline affectionate and coupling terminology like friend, or likening your experience as a shared exploration or journey taken together. Not only are you affirming that they're making the right choices, you've framed it in such a way that both of you are in it together. Which is sad in a way, because most of the time these people you help remember your name or what you look like. But unless there was a true sense of connection there or something really weird that happened, most of the time the salesperson forgets the customer the moment they walk out the door. Every step of the way, you're not forcing your customer to believe you or make decisions for them. What you're doing, or what you should be doing, is guiding them along the way to the best solution to whatever brought them to you. The goal is to allow them to feel comfortable while making them agreeable, but still in control of what ultimately happens at the register. Now, you might be wondering, how the frick does this play into what I'm talking about? Well, I'll tell you. My descent into being influenced started when I watched these creators review media I myself had already seen, because again, I figured doing so was safe due to already having my opinions about them, and I was trying to hedge my bets of being immune in my favor. And while I had a lot of initial pushbacks for their critiques or bad faith arguments, there were some objective story criticisms that I had common ground with these creators and their assessment. Things like weird character decisions, inconsistencies in world... Did you hear my voice crack? Inconsistencies in world building, and stuff like that. I was agreeing with what they were saying about the weaknesses of the story being told by the writers, directors, and actors. They were small and almost imperceptible yeses, which caused me to watch more of their content and then eventually move on to their reviews of things I hadn't seen yet, because on some level it felt like we agreed that narratives needed to be told better, even though I still disagreed on their reasons that DEI and following some ordained message were why they were being told poorly. And at some point, I had less and less pushbacks on their commentaries on social messaging and ideologies, and eventually I was trusting the analysis of these creators more and more because we both ultimately wanted the same thing: better stories being told. And where my desire for better storytelling was couched in verisimilitude and world building, my desires then changed to not only a different freaking couch, it changed to a whole different building in a different city on a different planet. Then instead of verisimilitude and world building, it became emotionally charged to the idea of inclusivity is what corrupts storytelling. I was prejudicing every trailer that came out by who was cast to play characters, suddenly invested in an actor's beliefs and political standings, which I never cared about before. Every game announcement was caused to be up in arms about how diluted game storytelling had become because of the way characters' models looked. I was upset or annoyed by the things that used to never bother me, and all the while I was encouraged by these creators to continue to froth at the mouth and how right or correct or smart I was as a viewer to have such a discernible lens on media being released today, as if I was a member of an exclusive club of seers behind the veils of propaganda and pandering being eked out into each new release. I had found myself consuming content that promoted this narrative of female protagonists as Mary Sues, how men in movies or shows are being demonized, infantilized, or prejudiced against, among other things, like I said earlier, with less and less pushback. And I had no real argument as to why I felt those things were true when I embarrassingly discussed these things with other people. I had no basis for the vitriol I was feeling other than a bastardized sense of unjust treatment to creativity. And the crazy thing is, I still held on to the belief of equality and representation at the core of myself, while paradoxically getting frustrated that those things were happening in movies, games, and shows because they correlated to bad storytelling. In 6 months, In 6 months, I had gone from being open-minded and enjoying watching movies, shows, games, stories, being told from diverse perspectives, to frustrated, annoyed, and confused why no one was doing anything to stop this apparent thorn in the side of creativity. Which only further drove this narrative being spun to me about a larger conspiracy to push a message down the throats of my friends and family. I was generating disdain for things that I didn't even watch, and getting upset with people who actually watched them when they presented supported and factual disagreements with me. And I just want to pause right here. Do you know how insane that sounds saying that sentence out loud? You know what's also insane? I was still watching the creators who more aligned with my personal beliefs of equality and who spoke of these movies, shows, games, whatever you want to, like whatever, with similar but more neutrally grounded critiques. But they did not resonate with me the same way the manufacturer disdain fed to me was. Was like no root cause for bad storytelling in their opinions or critiques, nor was there emotionally charged language to elicit a reaction from me. And then one day, after watching Strange World and Elemental, two movies vehemently spoken out against by these creators whom I was still convinced were not affecting me, I realized that I wasn't actually angry or annoyed or frustrated with the inclusion and representation in these movies like I was told I would be, like I felt I should be, like I was slowly conditioned to believe. I actually walked away from those movies feeling relieved, encouraged, humbled, and above all, embarrassed. Because it was throughout this slow process of agreeing, laughing, relating, and affirmations by these vitriolic creators that I realized I had fallen victim to an ideology that I didn't actually believe in. But the boredom and frustration I felt about recent stories being told due to weak writing and oversight was co-opted, misdirected, and warped into anger about things that overall didn't have anything to do with the stories being told. I was grifted! And it didn't matter how self-aware I was, how much I prepared myself mentally, and how stacked the deck I made in my favor. After 6 months of consistency, I was already emotionally betraying my beliefs and core values where logically I was still trying to uphold them. Two of the easiest ways to get someone on your side is to either find a common ground to stand on or a common enemy to be against. And for me, it was the common ground of desiring better stories being told that over time began to be warped and twisted into a conspiracy that the reason for bad storytelling was because of a message that had to be interjected in every one of these stories, eventually causing me to believe that I not only shared common ground, but now a common enemy with these creators. The cognitive dissonance was screaming at me every day because on one hand, I was voting for inclusivity and discussing these matters and their importance with my family and friends, but on the other hand, I was raging against these very notions only in relation to movies, shows, and video games. And after 6 months, I had to unsubscribe, unfollow, and move away from these types of creators because the anger I was feeling wasn't mine to feel. It was processed, packaged, and manufactured in such a way to cast a wide net and pull in anyone who gave it the time of day to speak. With every unsubscribe and don't recommend, the weight of judgment and anger lifted. Slowly. It's easy to fall into a well-disguised trap. It's a lot harder to claw yourself out of it. And all of this took place in the 2022-2023 timeframe, and even though that was a while ago, I can still feel the tinge of anger in the back of my mind at times. It's quiet, but it's still there. I give this impulse no room in my thoughts or actions though, but the wound is there. The scar is there. It's a reminder that it doesn't take a lot to lose ourselves to the influence of others. And that's the rub, as they say. Even though that's kind of a weird saying. What are we rubbing when we say that? Human beings are social creatures. We operate in societies, fight wars together, raise families together, create art and delicious food. We are predisposed to social structures and interactions. There are entire companies built on exploiting those biological prerogatives in us to get us to buy a product endorsed by a celebrity or a friend. And I think we could all agree that's kind of gross, but it's true. Content creators are no different in a way. They market themselves via personas and perceptions in order to make your time a commodity to be capitalized on. I'm not mad about it. Like, technically, I'm doing something like similar by way of making this video, and even though I don't currently benefit monetarily from it, I still could in the future, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. It's so incredibly easy, like alarmingly easy, to fall into thought processes similar to the ones I went through because of a weird sense of parasocial trust in someone that doesn't know you exist. We can mistake consistency for trustworthiness because as human beings, we're trained to recognize patterns and adjust behavior based on exposure to those patterns. And if you're consistently agreeing with someone in little things, it's not that far of a leap to begin to unconsciously agree with them on big things over time. Mom, dad, brother, uncle, friend, sister, or whatever, didn't develop an ideology from watching a questionable news channel once or twice. They developed it by slowly being eroded away through things like TV personalities they liked or having it play in the background as noise while they do tasks around the house or even drive their cars. Influence is subtle. It takes its time to till the landscape of your mind to plant an idea, water it, weed it, and allow it to take root to grow, eventually allowing it to become more than an idea, but a truth that bears the fruits of beliefs, characters, and habits. Brings me to a few questions, and an admission. The questions are ones that I will challenge you to really sit with and answer. What drives you to watch the content you do? What is it about the creators or the way they present content that keeps you coming back? Do you trust their opinions on the information being presented without further inquiry? And more importantly, why do you trust them? How or when did you get to a place of trusting them? And the final few questions. If you disagreed with my premise because you believe that you are someone who is above the influence like I did, why did you watch this far? Was it because you wanted to prove me wrong? Or was it because I sold you on the idea that you, at the completion of this video, will gain a better understanding of a method of how people like us can be influenced? So here, the admission. If that was the reason you stuck around, then I am here to tell you that I used the described sales tactics to get you to stick around without you realizing it. And you probably didn't think of it, even while I was describing how those methods are used. And for that, I feel like I owe you an apology, just a tiny baby one, because I used the aforementioned sales tactics to get you to stick around in order to prove a point, which I'll just quickly break down for you real quick. When I said, you may be inclined to argue with me on that point and be tempted to turn away from this video and turn it off for something else while I continue to yammer on inertly on your screen. You have every right to do so. However, what I was doing was acknowledging a trench you may have been in that would have prevented you from seeing the points I was going to express later. By highlighting the potential pushback you may give, I acknowledged your feelings, gave you space for them, and I identified the widest net I could cast for receiving the answer no that I could from my audience, while approaching it in a way that all control of what happens next was in your hands. What came next, though, was the slow process of getting you to say yes to things and finding common ground. I would ask you to grant me a couple of concessions if that's okay. Still giving you control, but hoping to garner my first yes. You may not personally have been affected by these things, and I think that's awesome. I really do. I love that for you. But I am sure you could agree with me, you know someone who has. Here I'm complimenting you, and because I had already previously admitted that I had been affected by other influencers when I thought I was immune, I'm putting myself in a perceived lower position than you, which makes me seem less of a threat. Then, this frames my statement of, I am sure you could agree with me, you know someone who has, as a request instead of what it is, which is an assertion of common ground and my next potential yes from you. And on top of that, on some level, you may be confused on how that person suddenly had shifts in their beliefs to something not previously held by them before, making all family gatherings really awkward now. Or you can agree with me that you are at the very least someone who is curious to see the actual appeal of why people watch someone else review media. Again, here we have another question with a high chance of being answered yes, more common ground, a joke that probably wasn't funny but humanized me in a way in its awkwardness, making me a smidge more relatable, and followed by not a question, but a statement that could end with more common ground and another yes. All of this followed with, so if you're willing to hear me out, I will quickly share my personal experience in this matter because I too thought myself above the influence. And if you stick with me to the end, you will be more aware of a method of how random people on the internet can influence everyday people like us, your friends or family. More relatable expressions by way of my personal experience of failure and recapping the benefits of sticking around, which is then concluded with, and I promise, you won't regret it. Clear affirmation that your time will be well spent and you're making a smart and good choice by sticking around. And all of that was a short segment of this video. Imagine consuming content that is nothing but this process for over 15 to 30 minutes at a time for days and months on end. The scary thing is, you may be someone who has already been consuming this content for years and have not realized it yet. To circle back to the beginning of this video, long gone are the days where I believe people sat around on bated breath, waiting for a trailer to drop for the next blockbuster movie. Most people nowadays avoid trailers because they give away the twists and turns of what they're trying to generate intrigue and incitement for. But we're in an era of media consumption where instead of watching the movie or show ourselves, we've outsourced that task to other people and watched them talk about and ascribe their opinions as our own, satisfied to shirk the media literacy and nuance because we like the way someone explains something better. I'm not trying to be dour or over cynical. I'm just trying to be honest, and I hope that my experience can help someone bail from the trains of ideologies they don't actually believe in before it is too late and they're trapped in an endless loop of anger and isolation akin to a train circling its caboose around a Christmas tree. I love stories. I love critiquing them. And that's because I love trying to understand them on my own. And when I can't, listening to people or having discussions with people who may have a better understanding of like nuances or references I missed without interjecting some personal form of prejudice or vitriol in their explanation helps me understand those things on a deeper level. So if you made it this far, I want to say thank you. Like, it means the world to me because I highly enjoy talking about movies, music, like shows and other things. So I just want to say thank you for giving me the space to do so. I appreciate all of you very much. And honestly, if you like agree or disagree, please let me know below. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts or even your own personal experiences with these matters. So with that being said, until next time. Oh, and never forget, you are always one bad media review away from ascribing to an ideology that you never thought you would in a million years.